What prompted those people to travel to the Volga River? What prompted those people to travel to Russia? You know, you have Russian Germans, you know, Russian over in Kaliningrad, or Königsberg was a famous German town. In Poland, Gdansk, nowadays it's fully Polish. It used to be, until 1945, it was 100% German. So, of course, you would ask a question. I guess if I was a student, if a professor was asking me a question, I would wonder, what made those Germans travel so much in Eastern Europe? And then I would wonder, why don't we have the French, ethnic French living in Eastern Europe? Why are there no Englishmen living in a Danube basin? Why are no Spanish, for that matter? So these are solid questions and very legitimate questions. The answer? Geography, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. The Germans have the saying, but so do all Central European peoples, you know, Mitteleuropa, that's the heart of Europe, that geography is your destiny. I don't want to brag with my German. Geografie ist unser Schicksal. Geography is your destiny. What does that mean? You can change your religion. You can be a Catholic, you can be a Moonie, you can be a dog worshipper, a lover, whatever you can be. That's no sweat, okay? You can be a communist one day, you can be an anarchist, you can be a street fighter, you can be whatever you want. But you cannot change your geography. That's the way it is. In fact, even Jefferson looked from the same perspective in where the White House now is, as Bush and Bushites, or for that matter Clinton and Obama. In fact, the perception they had about their surrounding was pretty much the same. So we can take this not as a variable, but as a constant. You know, it's here. Geography, unfortunately, was not very kind to Germany. And what you see here on the map is what? Anno Domini, or the year 2006 or 7. I didn't check the date of when this map was printed. But this is more or less recent and decent, and it looks pretty good. But believe it or not, just 20 years ago, those borders, no way, just didn't exist. How about 100 years ago? Totally different. There were no borders here. They looked completely different. You will ask me a question, what does this have to do with the Germans? Well, try to spot here Germany on the map. I'm sorry, the map is not too big, but I'm sure you can find it. You will find about the Germans, the German people per se, and this is quite important, I need to insist on that for a sec. Germany nowadays, or the German people per se, has never had specific and well-defined borders. They've always been open to the east, to the west, to the south, and to the north. If you look at Spain, if you look at Italy, if you look at France, and if you look at England, they have a marvelous, we can say, a marvelous geopolitical role, position. No wonder that those people established first their states, solid states, and Germany never could. Germany established what we call now a nation state only in 1871. So Germany is a latecomer. Why was it the latecomer? Precisely because of its scattered populace all over Eastern Europe. Some of those areas were quite condensed and very, very dense and very adjacent to the German Reich, however bad this connotation can give you now. And some, like in Kazakhstan, how can you incorporate the Germans from Kazakhstan in Volga into into Germany as you see it now on the map? I know it's a little bit complicated, but to make the story short, precisely because of its porous borders, Germany has been shrinking. Well, on the average, if you take 1648, the Westphalia Treaty, which was a major event in European history, also in international law, you will realize that Germany, on the average, has been changing every 40 years its borders. After all, 20 years ago, German borders did not look like they do nowadays. This also explains almost, I should say, a neurotic character among Germans. And this also explained to some extent when we deal with the Donau-Schwaben, the Donau Germans. They were not the Germans per se, they were not in the German jurisdiction, and yet at the time they were under Austro-Hungarian German jurisdiction. I hope I'm not confusing you, indeed. You've got to do some reading about that, because, again, we cannot make in any way whatsoever parallels between the United States of America as a multi-ethnic, multicultural country and, let us say, Austro-Hungarian monarchy, where 1.5 million Donau-Schwaben or Donau Germans lived until 1918. Those folks were not ethnically different. In fact, they just spoke different languages, and they were full-fledged citizens. And of course, they didn't have troubles immersing themselves or assimilating themselves with the culture. Just for your, if I can, on a linguistic level, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you will appreciate that. Probably you can, of course, you can correct me. In the English language and the French language, the term state and nation is often used synonymously, because the nation-state building of the United States of America was quite different from Germany. Okay, and I'll tell you why. And État, nation, or let's say nation state, it's used synonymously. Not so in Germany. These are deadly diverse names. Volk is not the same as nation. Volk has a very specific German, not just resonant, it has a different, almost transcendental meaning. And by the way, the German word Staat, which means state, does not quite correspond to what we now call the French state, the Jacobin state, or for that matter, the American state. The word Reich, we translate it into empire. Not good. This is not good because the empire, the French empire, if I can make another digression, was more of a centralistic kind. Reich, if you look at the etymology of the word Reich, forget about the Third Reich. This was the aberration of the Second and the First Reich. The Third Reich was the aberration of the First and Second Reich. It was a sort of a confederal concept and very transcendental, religious. It was not, how can I say, it was not bound by borders. It was not geographically bound. It was more like a Reich. Reich to me in German means Reich, to reach. It means to spread out. This is just a little digression I wanted to give you an idea of. So just to sum this up, precisely because of those unspecific borders, the German people, which was the most populous back then, as it is today, there's 100 million citizens in the European Union whose mother tongue is the German language. But they're also scattered, as they've been for centuries, under 3 different jurisdictions. In Switzerland, northern part of Belgium, Austria is an independent state, but yes, they speak the German language, German culture. And then, of course, you still find a little bit of those spots, those little islands, which used to be big islands with 12 million Germans from Memel, if you wish, well, I'll show you from here. Talking, I don't have a mic, but you will hear me. Okay, Estonian Germans, all the way down to Romania. About 12 million people, we're talking probably even more, but I don't want to exaggerate with the numbers. So again, this gives you a sense of, how can I say, a neurotic identity. Where do you belong to? During the Second World War, of course, you know what happened, that many Germans from that area looked towards Berlin, because this was for them their alma mater. They thought that their identity must be inspired from the new regime, or for that matter, from this new geopolitical configuration. But then, again, you know what happened after the Second World War. I cannot give you this precise specific, but every other, literally every other German nowadays, and there's about 60, 70, well, let's 80 million Germans all in Germany nowadays. Every third family has somebody who comes from either what is today Croatia, or Serbia, or Romania, Russia, Kazakhstan, Estonia, you name it. I think I gave you a little bit too much of it. I still think I have 10 minutes now. I'm coming back to my Donau Schwabian. The problem with Europe, let me just change the topic, is that you know what happened after the First World War. Whatever I may think about the Austro-Hungarian Empire, I think it was a very legitimate, decent system. Why? Not just because of its legality, but because precisely it lasted for 400 years. It means that it also had some legitimacy. It was truly a multicultural system. I don't like this word system. It was a multicultural, huge empire where the Croats were Germans, were Hungarians, Slovenes, Romanians. They lived more or less